And welcome to another Comics with Kids. This is the second breakdown video that I've done so far, where we're looking at a comic book storyline that I really like and sort of going through the trades so that you can decide maybe if this is one that you want to check out as well. The first one I did was on the Green Lantern Jeff Johns run, so if you haven't checked that one out, take a look. This one is going to be on the Jason Aaron Thor run, specifically the run with Jane Foster as Thor. This is covering 8 trades. There's no way I can do that in one post. Plus, I want to give a little bit of a backstory so that you can kind of understand how it all starts, because you need a little bit of that to get going. So I'm splitting it into 2 pieces. So this will be the first 4 trades in this storyline. The information you need going in, this is by Jason Aaron, and before he started with Lady Thor and Jane Foster, he was doing Thor proper. It was Thor the God of Thunder. It was the storyline. And he was also doing an event for Marvel called Original Sin. And those 2 things play a big part in this storyline as well. Specifically in the previous storyline, Thor was becoming very disillusioned with the role of gods versus mortals, and feeling like maybe the role of a god was not to be so omniscient and omnipotent. At the same time, he got thrown into an unusual battle in the storyline Original Sin, which, if you've never read it, it's a decent Marvel event. But there's a culminating battle where Thor fights Nick Fury. It's very important because obviously that seems like a pretty outmatched battle, but Nick Fury has something up his sleeve, which is he has a piece of information. He says he whispers something to Thor in the key moment in the battle, and it is so powerful, I guess, that Thor drops the hammer and is unable to pick it up again. They're battling on the moon, and the hammer falls to the ground on the moon, and Thor is unable to call it to him or do anything. He becomes somewhat useless in the fight from then on. And that's kind of where our trades pick up. So the 4 trades that I'm talking about today are Thor, Goddess of Thunder, and Thor Who Holds the Hammer, which are the 8 issues that kind of set up this character. And then The Unworthy Thor, which is also by Jason Aaron. And then the first of the 5 trades that are just called The Mighty Thor. This one is Thunder in Her Veins. So I'm going to go through those real quickly. The first 2 trades go together, and they're very important. And the idea is plainly that after dealing with the frustration of not being able to pick up the hammer, someone mysteriously can pick it up, and they take on this persona, this sort of female Thor persona. I really like this trade a lot because it really gives you an understanding without having to know a lot about these characters. And I'll tell you, I knew very little except for the 3 Marvel films that they've done. If you've seen those movies, you really have a lot of the background that you need. What I liked here was they really sort of bring all the key elements back. You have Odin and his wife, and the sort of back and forth of power balance that happens there in Asgard. And Asgard has been destroyed previously, and so there's like the ruins and then the new Asgard that everyone is sort of living in. And then they also bring back all the great villains, because Thor can't pick up the hammer. A lot of villains view this as a vulnerability, and they decide to take advantage. Key among them is Malekith, the villain from Thor Dark World. He's a dark elf, and he comes from a different planet, a realm, and he is going to take advantage of Earth being unprotected. And so he's doing a lot of manipulating in these first few stories. But what I really like about it is the way that they set up Thor, the female Thor, as being this kind of great oddity. Here she is questioning herself even. In this moment, she's announcing to these bad guys, the name is not Wench, I am the goddess of thunder. And then in her mind she says, I am? Holy crap. because even she doesn't believe that this is actually happening. And we don't know who is behind the mask at this point. It's all kind of done as a mystery. These first 8 issues are really drawing out the mystery of who is this person, even though I'm going to ruin that one little element for you because it's not possible to keep it a secret. It's fun to see it drawn out in a fun sort of way. And the character, Jane Foster, doesn't believe that this is actually happening to her. Meanwhile, you have Thor very upset, right? He couldn't pick up this hammer, and yet somehow she goes to the moon and says, you know, there will always be a Thor, and the hammer allows it. It's almost like the hammer called her there, and that's a really kind of fun way to do it. I thought it was a really creative system. Thor, meanwhile, has run off in anger, and he's gotten a different weapon from the armory. He's gotten this steed that he rides. It's a goat, but it allows him to like travel through time and space. And he battles Malekith on his own and gets totally beat. In fact, he gets his arm cut off. Malekith toys with him and cuts his arm off. And then, in very dramatic, sort of comedic fashion, almost, he wears it. Malekith wears the arm, like, constantly. It's almost through like 5 issues. He just keeps wearing this arm. It's hysterical. And of course, a little bit graphic and a little bit violent. Thor later gets like a metallic one added on. And he is not super happy to see that someone has taken his hammer. And that's a fun sort of design in the story, where you get to see he stops calling himself Thor. He starts calling himself Odin's son. And he definitely wants his hammer back, and he's not okay with it. And that's the biggest part of this trade, and the reason why I like it a lot is it really doesn't make it easy for Jane. She's really got to prove herself to everybody, including her own self, like, I can do this. And in the end, Thor admits that she is worthy, even though he doesn't know who she is, and that really eats away at him. The only person she doesn't convince, and the problem is, she doesn't convince Odin. And Odin decides to send the Destroyer to get the hammer back. And that sort of is the whole point of the second trade, which is my least favorite in a sense, because there's only 3 issues in here. The rest are done by other artists, and they're funny and entertaining. Some of them are like flashback style, done like the Age of Kirby and those kinds of things. This one really focuses on Jane versus Odin, and it builds to some exciting sort of battles between the two of them, where she's trying to prove herself, and then Thor is trying to figure out who this person behind the mask is. He even comes up with a little list, and he's crossing names off the list as he gets closer to figuring out who has my hammer. He goes through all the people he thinks it could possibly be, even Jane. But he dismisses her because Jane is dealing with chemotherapy. And so here we have her, towards the end, the reveal of who is actually carrying this hammer. When Jane lets the hammer go, she turns back into this sort of cancer-ridden version of herself. So very powerful stuff. You get mortality and immortality, gods versus mortals. And the fun of it for me is that everything is played for several levels of entertainment: comedic, dramatic, and all the great characters that we've seen so far. Even if you've only seen the Marvel movies, they all play a fun role. The Warriors 3 and Lady Sif and all these kinds of side characters get their little moments, and it's done for comedy in some cases. There's a great little one in that last trade where you get to see the Warriors 3 trying to see if she can drink as well as the Thor they've known before now. So there's like a drinking competition that's very entertaining. All of this sort of leads to Thor the Unworthy, which isn't drawn by the same guy, but is written by Jason Aaron. These were done by Russell Dauterman, and this is done by Copiel. I don't know this gentleman, Olivier Copiel. Sounds maybe French, I don't know. This one centers on Thor chasing down the option or possibility of a different hammer that he learns about in the ruins of the old Asgard. And so he goes there to seek it out, and there's a lot of drama that leads in that storyline, obviously. But I do like that this. I marked a spot that was funny because they use comedy really well too. You have him being led around by this sort of new version of the Watcher, and the Watcher is saying that it sees and knows everything. And he says, "Then what did I have for breakfast?" And the Watcher says, "Alcoholic beverages and self-loathing." And then Thor says, "Well, lucky guess." It's just I like that they leave room for the humor inside of all of it. It's just very well kind of told. This one obviously deals a lot with Thor's self-loathing, and what is important in this storyline is several things. Obviously, Thor chasing down the possibility of another hammer, and can he find worthiness in himself? But also, on top of that, you learn what Nick Fury whispered to him and the significance of that and why it made him drop the hammer. And it goes all the way back to Jason Aaron's earlier run on Thor, the Thor God of Thunder, when he was really starting to question the function of gods and if he could even justify being one anymore. So it was a really, really well done storyline. And it fits in between all of the other 5 trades, the ones that are the Mighty Thor, which is the last one I want to finish with here. And these 5 are the best of the lot. As much as I like those a lot, they really got going here. Once they could admit who Jane Foster was as Thor, it allowed them a lot of freedom, and they came up with some really quality storytelling. And of course, it gave them the chance to bring back the great villain, Loki, and that storyline and how they could bring Loki in. And this is where he really gets to play all these fun versions of himself, because of course he can't play the brother, which is what he's always played up to now. And when he tries to play the brother, it doesn't go very well. She knows he's a trickster. She knows the games. So she just lops his head right off. And of course, he comes back immediately. And all these versions of himself, if you've ever read the comics or seen the movies, he has many appearances, whether he's the little boy, a frost giant, or what have you. He even creates a version of himself to match her, a female version of Thor. Just Loki, to go with the female version of Thor. Very entertaining and very well done. And all of it still connected to the villains, the great Thor villains, whether it's Malekith, who's still playing his role here, or whether it's Loki, or even the Frost Giants, who play a significant part as well. They all sort of come in and out. And all of it to prove that she's not a false Thor or a thief, which is what Odin is presenting her to be, this thief who stole what was rightfully his son's property. And that's going to be a plot line that goes all the way through, and it builds really, really well. In fact, you even get this amazing cover here where it's Odin's face all angry, but in his eye patch you can see, I don't know how well you can see it here, but you get Lady Thor just sort of charging right in, because this is kind of what they're building through in all of these sort of early trades is she actually worthy of this? And obviously Odin has one view. These covers are really, really great too. I think Russell Dodderman is going to be somebody who really continues to do amazing things with Marvel. I think he's got another sort of secret project that he's supposed to be doing with Marvel in the next year. He has been really secretive on his Instagram about it, so I'm curious. But those are the first 4 trades and a little backstory for you guys. I'll break down the other 4 trades here in another one of these breakdown videos. But until then, please like and subscribe, leave a comment if you've read any of these, or I'm still learning about Jason Aaron, so if you've got a better Jason Aaron story that I should check out. Russell Dodderman I haven't heard a lot of, except Jason Aaron I have heard of because I read Scalped before this, but I haven't read much more than Original Sin and this, and a little bit of the previous Thor storyline. So I'm still learning about him as well. So stay tuned, and hopefully I'll have another one of those videos soon.